Namaste and a very warm welcome to our dear viewers. Welcome to episode 6 of India Rising. India has surely made great strides in the last 9 years, you would agree with me. But there have recently been a lot of questions raised on some of the contradictions surfacing around the changing government policies and what is actually the ground reality. Let's discuss. We have with us once again our esteemed panel of Dr. Nivedita Haran and Professor Narayanan Komerath. Welcome, both of you. Welcome, Professor Narayanan. Welcome, Dr. Nivedita.
Thank
So,
you.
today's episode is about bridging the gap between policy and reality. My first question is to you, Nivedita. You chaired a working group at the first Abdul Kalam conference where you pointed out that India's major challenge is how to bridge policy and implementation. So, could you please tell us more about that?
Thank you, Anjali. Uh, I think that the first Abdul Kalam conference, which was held at IIT Madras in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, was an eye opener for many. I think it was a rare occasion where we brought together experts, practitioners, administrators, academicians, local body elected representatives, and many others onto the same platform. And having been a part of administration for many years, and having been invited by the conference organizers, let me dwell on that. When the PM, let me start with an instance. When the Honorable PM declared in 2014 the Swachhata mission, I think it said a lot for what the priority of the government was, and I think many of us, and I was, pleasantly surprised and extremely hopeful that an area which had been ignored will now get the required attention. But and I think as we go on with our discussion, more and more of these instances will come out. There is a huge gap between what is declared as a policy from the government, from the central government, or even from the state government by the CM or a minister, and the what happens on the field, in the field. And I think that is the gap, that is the biggest challenge now in India. And I believe that is the weakest link in our system. And unless we fill that gap, unless we bridge that gap, I think we are going to again get into the same rigmarole of declarations, money being allocated, but nothing visible on the ground. Now, I'll just mention these, but I think as we go along, we'll discuss in more detail. When you talk about the administration, what are the different, the sectors that we can deal, how we can deal with them? First is the selection process. Is it the right way? Are we selecting the right people? Then the training, the induction training and the in-service training. What are the training inputs? What are we training our administrators to be? Then the management of the service. How are they going? How is the service being managed? Are the good ones being taken care of? Are the laggards being improved? Is there an accountability? Performance. How is the performance gauged? The professionalism that they need to have. Is it that the professionalism is being taught to them? Is it being ingrained in them? And finally, the motivation. What is the motivation with which they are working? Is the motivation getting the salary, being in a good job, having a lot of power, or is the motivation being able to harass people, having a red light over their cars? So, what is the motivation that keeps them there? So, I think I'll stop here. I'll not go on this, but these are the issues that we need to discuss in this current episode.
So, I want to ask my next question to Narayanji. Narayanji, you are usually so upbeat and positive on India, but you have a dire warning on what you see ahead in India. So I would request you to be the devil's advocate for a change. So, what do you have to say?
So, namaste. Yes, today it's my job to be devil's advocate. I've always respected and admired all the presidents and prime ministers that India has elected. I've seen only two prime ministers when they visited our town, and I greatly admire the present prime minister as the others, uh, as do so many people around the world. And I'm amazed at the things that his government has achieved in these past 9 years. But for the same reason, I want to convey what I see honestly. We have tried to convey what we have learned about the fabulously organized reforms and improvements that the government has brought in past episodes to this series. Many of those reforms are in grave danger. They're in danger due to what I see as sorry, sabotage by those who are entrusted with implementing reforms. This sabotage sends people running from pillar to post, continuing and increasing and festering opportunities for corruption on which the crooks capitalize at the expense of the people. This also opens up opportunities, and today that is very, very, very imminent for foreign and domestic enemies of India to cause huge destabilization. The bureaucracy is squarely responsible for this. Not only are they the ones who should be proactive in implementing and maintaining reforms, they're also the ones who are, in many cases, the problem.
That is a lot. That is definitely a lot to say. And I would request you, Narayanji, if you could cite some examples.
Yes, as a tiny sample. People will laugh when I say this. I said, you don't know. As a famous expert on South Asia once told me after reading a paper on Pakistani terrorism, he said the author doesn't know 90% of how bad the situation is. Well, that may be true. But I will mention three examples of what I see in well intentioned projects. The first is Swachh Bharat, the second is Digital India at several levels. And third is the overall situation of Indian software and IT. And then some suggestions are respectfully submitted. Swachh Bharat. So the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan program was to provide basic public toilets, but also to clean up India in general. This has made a massive difference to India. I got to tell you, trains are apparently well maintained, clean. Many restaurants trying to keep clean and well functioning toilets. I don't know if they're required to do that, but they're doing it. I think the schools and colleges have them, which makes a huge difference to education. But is that it? I live in a district capital city, not in the boondocks. Sorry, in 2023, they don't have a functioning garbage disposal system. The streets are littered with garbage. Beautiful fields are littered with garbage. The biggest annual festival comes along the street with three elephants and a fabulous mela. For the first time since the COVID pandemic, there's a nice, joyous crowd. Great. There were no toilet facilities available. One little girl needed to find a toilet. We had to host her in our home. There must have been so many others like that. I was told that the organizers did indeed plan for toilets, but at the last minute, the city corporation denied them permits. Some petty politics. Can you imagine such pettiness? So, who is responsible? The Prime Minister? No. I believe the relevant responsible official is the collector of the district, whose office is maybe 4 kilometers down the road. With all due respect, he is responsible for denying access for a young lady to use a toilet during a major public festival. But voters, including that child's parents, would remember that and blame the government, blame the prime minister. This is sabotage. Many IAS officers, and I don't think I'm saying anything that surprises anybody, are simply not connected to the people whom they are sworn to serve. They have never had to stand in a queue since age 25, not even when going to a place of worship, where others spend hours standing in the queue. Never had to apply in person at a government office for a driver's license or pay an electricity bill. Never had to fill out their own income tax form. They're either ignorant or uncaring or both about the daily experience of people. Welcome to India's bureaucracy. Of course, there are many IAS officers, very good officers, wonderful ones, and I can name quite a few. Present company not included, of course there should be, but I know some very, very, very good IAS officers. But it's like saying most trains don't collide, most airplanes don't crash. This is not a confidence booster. The government, meaning the political leadership, invariably gets the blame while it should be placed on the official. They need to be named like they do in China. They make them stand with a sign on their neck saying, I am an idiot, and wearing a cap or something like that. I don't think we should go to that extremes, but there needs to be more responsibility.
I
So
agree,
I'm
Professor.
looking at Nivedita. Yes, please go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
I agree, Professor. You're right. You're totally right. And I'll take up on the point you said that no IAS officer from the age of 25 has ever had to stand in a queue, go to a ration shop, even go to a hospital and have to wait to get a checkup. No. Now, why is it so? Why is it so? I think you are right that there is a disconnect. There's a serious disconnect between what between the officers and the people they serve, and why. But I think we need to understand why it is so, and we need to find ways to remove that. It may not happen overnight, but it needs to happen. Now, this culture of Ji Huzur, that IAS officer is a big man and I cannot walk into his room, and if he comes somewhere, he has to be given precedence. Who has built this culture up? Take a simple thing. When an IAS officer when a person gets selected into the IAS, into the civil services, have you seen the way the Kerala, even in Kerala, in educated Kerala, literate Kerala, he's fitted and he's made to feel as if he's conquered the Everest. Why is it so? It's any other job. The only difference is that it's a job which gives a lot of power, but it's also a job that demands a lot of responsibility and a lot of empathy, which unfortunately is lacking. And I have to admit that things in the academy where we are trained, this is in a way, it is reinforced. We are not able to understand how we will be closer to the people. Rather than that, we are taught how we need to ensure how to say no to people. Now, I think that is where the basic problem lies. And how do we get out of that? And I just want to finish by mentioning one more point. It's human nature to be happy when they are taken out and they are made to feel as if they are something bigger. They are God's own children. But why do the people allow that to happen? Why is it that the people make the IAS officer feel that he's something more than the others? In fact, if anything, he is less because he probably has come from better background. But then the other side is also there. I know for sure. And in our country, we have the reservation system where almost 15 or 20%, 15% of the new entrants are from the what we call the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe communities. Now, are they any more empathetic? Unfortunately, no. What happens to them? These are children who have been brought up in villages, in rural areas. They have studied in the local government schools, and their parents were not well off. And yet, when they get into the IAS, something turns. The worm turns there. And I think that is where the difference lies. And that is where the problem lies. And we need to take that on head on.
Narayanji, you argued for a Paperwork Reduction Act, right? So could you please elaborate on that?
Yes. We get to the second of Prime Minister Modi's reforms that were announced on Independence Day 2014, 9 years ago now. 700 million digital bank accounts. What a stunning ambition. And I think they've gone, maybe not 700 million, but they've gone close to that. No paperwork. The bank comes to the customer through the net. Recently, we opened a bank account at the Canara Bank, which is a public PSU bank. It was a pleasant and quick experience. The staff, down from the manager, were very helpful, very professional. I really commend them. But I got a document, not from Canara Bank, but another bank, 14 pages. What was it? It's the form to renew, mind you, renew, not a new application, the safe deposit locker that my wife and I have been using for the past 30 years. It's similar for all PSU banks, 14 pages. Plus, they need hard copy, color, passport size photos, signatures across the bottom of every page, and they don't give you a copy of what you signed. It's like, hey, read it if you want. I don't know what you're signing. You don't know what you're signing, but just sign it. It's none of the customer's business. It's only to protect the government against the customer who's stupid enough to entrust their valuables to the bank for safekeeping. That's the impression that is conveyed. Why do they need our photos? Our photos are on our Aadhaar cards, which we gave Aadhaar card hard copy, signature self-attested on the bottom. They're on our PAN cards. Our PAN cards are linked to our Aadhaar cards. Our photos are on the extensive KYC, know your customer documents. That's another story in itself. They're also with our basic account opening statements, their forms. So why two new hard copy photos to renew a safe deposit locker that they hold, that we pay every month? This is a very small example of the abusive and needless paperwork imposed by government officials. And maybe they're lawyers who can't get a job in private sector running a practice on people of India every day. If you question it, they'll send you to jail for 3 months rigorous imprisonment. Or they'll say, what to do? RBI rules only. Who is this RBI? IAS officers, I suppose, who don't ever stand in queues or fill their own forms. Many of these forms have not had any intelligent review. The Indian income tax not software, what is that? Saral, ITR2. I don't know about the others, which was completely revised in 2022, still asked in 2022. Do you own race horses? No, but my classmates used to bring matchboxes to school, each containing a racing cockroach to release under the teacher's care. I don't know if that counts. Why only race horse?
That's funny.
Why not race?
That's a good one.
Mostly these are blamed on the RBI, Reserve Bank of India. Far from tightening controls against fraud, they are opening the way to corruption. That's my point. Now, this
Yeah.
blatantly violates the top leadership's declared policy intent. General V.K. Singh, then a minister, explained this to us at an Indian consulate some years ago. Government policy has changed. It is now to trust the citizen. Believe what they say, cut the red tape. But we will check and we have deterrent enforcement. That is very wise. That's how smart countries do that. In other words, don't go and bother honest law-abiding people. Reserve your resources to check and go after the lawbreakers and fraudsters. These people are doing the exact opposite. They're violating policy laid down from the top. If the government is to retain credibility, it should be seen to crack down on such practices. Don't keep it secret. Other countries also have forms, but today most of them offer these forms as what are called fillable or editable PDF, portable document format. You download the form, then you can type directly into the PDF and save and upload that. No one needs to print it, no one needs to transcribe it. You don't have to find a black pen to fill it in tiny letters. How much handwriting and scratching out and typing errors can be avoided? I have never seen a fillable PDF used by the Indian government or banks or financial companies. Not in KYC updates, not application forms. Don't they have the resources? Why is this so hard? This is beyond laziness.
Yeah, I think
True.
I must thank Anjali for this. But Professor Narayanan, after this, I'm going to put this down and actually send it to the Secretary DFS, the Department of Financial Services, about the form of for filling up the form, the KYC, the income tax. I think these are very, very valid points,
Yes.
and we have to take them up. We have to ensure, because you see, we have crossed the first step, but now the next step is to improve on it, and that is where it's
Exactly.
important.
I would congratulate you beforehand, Nivedita, for taking this huge step. I think this is really important, and I appreciate you for doing that. My next question is to Narayananji. You had a comment on the problem of data security and the danger of identity theft in India. So, do you want to say something about that?
Yes, now this is a vast topic, and you can get expert people to talk about data security and AI and this and that. But I want to raise some simple things. I wonder who safeguards all these personal data and forms that we are routinely asked to submit with hard copies. The answer is no one. The banks, the phone companies, airlines, income tax people all send you many emails and SMS warning you never divulge personal information. Then they send you emails and SMS wishing you a happy birthday. Isn't that a nice contribution to help the identity thieves? The name, email address, phone number, date of birth, all together. One compact place to go and steal. Funny thing is, at least in my case, all these dates never match the only birth date that I ever reveal in public, which is on Facebook.
So,
But isn't that dangerous? Even on Facebook, I don't think you should. Anyway, that's a different issue.
Yes,
I agree that we need to tackle it. But let's face it, the banking and financial sectors have a long way to go. But it can only go this much at present, and I think it'll move further as time moves on. And at the same time, you remember even 10 years back how difficult it used to be to transfer money, to make bill payments, etc., etc. At least I hope those are
absolutely.
simplified for you, Professor.
Yes, absolutely. Very true. Digital India has really worked wonders. Which is why
Hmm.
it's so important to not let it get destroyed by detractors who say, ha ha ha, look at that, that doesn't work. Government should resign. Everything comes down to Prime Minister should resign, right? We don't want that to happen. It has really worked wonders. It has changed India, so transformed India. These days, even I rarely need even a debit card. I just use my phone and UPI, or I can do a NEFT transfer through bank account for larger amounts. So convenient, and it works most of the time. When it doesn't, no one can help. That's a different matter. Strange things happen. But this is also why officials have to respect personal data. There are so many reports of identity thefts, bank accounts being emptied out instantly, all these convenient things which I don't use to do this and that through the phone. If that happens, it's a waste of time to approach law enforcement. There isn't any.
so Narayananji, is there any way to fix this? How can we fix this?
Actually, I do. And that is the main purpose for bringing all these up. Anjali ji, the government at the very top has their heart set in the right direction. They have gone to immense effort. I don't know how they planned all these things. But having passed the laws needed for all these Digital India initiatives, the PM has now started calling for zero tolerance for corruption. Absolutely the right thing. But that's easier said than done. Corruption is firmly tied into the appearance of bureaucratic incompetence. You see, that's the problem. It's never very blatant. I mean, people don't just come out and say, oh, if you want this done, I need 2,000 rupees. They won't say that. It's done through a very, they know. There are big signs saying any demand for bribe and you will be taken away to jail or whatever. Software that gives mysterious errors that no one can diagnose. The OTP, the one time PIN, doesn't arrive. Forms don't upload to the server. That's the Parivahan site. That's a different story. Bank websites and bill paying websites crash frequently. Recently, I got a computer fixed. And I couldn't get it back because when I paid them, the payment would not go through to them. Not on my side. On theirs, I've never heard about a company that could not accept payment. All these open up opportunities for corruption. Now, I'm going to tell you something. And people will say, "Oh, these foreigners, we don't want to hear about America." But I want to tell you a story. In the 1980s, American President Ronald Reagan imposed a Paperwork Reduction Act. He demanded that the bureaucracy slash paperwork, or he would close down their entire departments and fire them all. And he did that to a couple of departments. The act required that bureaucrats had to measure the time required to fill the form and put that on the form, and then they would be tested on that. Of course, the bureaucracy is smart in America too. They sabotaged him. They added a Paperwork Reduction Act notice saying what they would do to you if you didn't fully answer all the questions on the form. But the forms did become shorter. The print and the spaces on the forms became larger, which is very important for old people like me. Have you looked at some of these forms in India? Even with glasses, I can't read properly. Maybe that's the intent. They had to put in fillable PDFs. Life did actually improve. So India too needs a paperwork reduction act with real teeth, 90% cut. Demand that. Don't be afraid. I bet the nation will function much smoother. People will be so relieved.
So, Narayananji, what teeth can we put into this Paperwork Reduction Act?
Of course, there's a good reason why they don't put me in any management position. I would say staff retention and budgets for departments should be inversely proportional, not directly proportional to their paperwork. In, if they are successful in reducing paperwork, reward that. They do that and stay efficient. The top officials should be held accountable for removing thoughtless items. I mean, do you own race horses in 2023 India? Ask them, why is this still here? Make real improvements. Tough measures against plainly lying on performance data. This is the other thing they do. Oh, our standard is half an hour wait time, or else please approach the RTO, except you can't find the RTO, so that problem doesn't exist. Okay. So punishment for the CEO of any bank or director of any office that demands hard copy photos, Aadhaar or PAN from a person who has provided a valid Aadhaar card image. That's biometric ID that contains all the information. Why do you need anything else?
Yeah, I think what we have been discussing for the last half an hour is extremely important and potent for us, because unless these are taken care of, I don't think the country will progress as fast as we want it to progress. And I think corruption has been the bane of our civil service, our society, not just the civil services, even in other areas one comes across corrupt practices. I think one of the best ways to reduce corruption has been the DBT, which is the ensuring that all financial transactions happen through the banking process, through the financial system. And the second is to reduce the interaction between the officials and the customer, the person who has a grievance or who has a request. I think that these are the two ways in which corruption can be reduced. And I think we
So,
have to find more and more ways.
uh, I have another question, and either of you could answer. The present government in India has been putting a lot of emphasis on DBT, which is the direct benefit transfers. And as you said, Nivedita, reducing interaction between citizens and officials, as a way to reduce corruption. But how much is it working?
So I'll
Yeah.
tell you that direct benefit transfer is a fabulous idea. Yes, apparently people are hugely benefiting from that, but I think you should probably invite somebody who knows the real realities of that if they are different. I'm going to divert to an example of how the bureaucracy sabotages the idea of less need for interaction. Suppose someone finds an error in the name under which their electricity bill is coming. I said, oh my goodness, this is not in my name. This is clerical error. Someone took 3 bills from the same area to be paid. The electricity office put the same name on all 3 because they were too lazy to check, maybe too tired. There's a form to fix that. It's 1 page. I've seen it. You can download it. It needs the Aadhaar of the correct person. It needs a letter from the present bill recipient agreeing to the change. Upload those, it's done. In theory. In practice, that has taken over 3 months. 10 visits to various officers. It's not done yet. Maybe it is. I don't know. The file now has about 35 pages. 2 documents on 200 rupees stamp paper. Certificate of ownership had to be obtained by standing in a queue from another office of the same corporation. And that certificate is specific for this purpose. You have to give the originals. So next time you need a certificate of ownership, you have to go stand in line to get a new one with a new application with new stamp paper. There is a shorter way. Could have hired an agent and paid a bribe. This is how it is done. So what happens when the government's political party campaigns are saying DBT removes the need for residents to actually go to government offices and get officials to actually do any work? They will just laugh and they will blame the prime minister. See, this is
So,
the danger.
sorry, Narayanji, didn't mean to interrupt you. Please complete your sentence. It's you are really bringing
No, no,
out some
I'm
very.
done. I'm done.
I wanted to ask you that the mechanization and digitization are there methods to improve productivity, efficiency, services. But this recent train accident in Odisha has been a tragedy and a shocker. So Indian Railways has had a fairly good record until now. So what are the ways to prevent such occurrences in the future?
Yeah, it was a shocker. The accident was a shocker. It came out of the blue, and nobody had expected an accident of this magnitude would happen in India. And I think an inquiry is going on, so I wouldn't be privy to what the reasons and the situations were. So therefore, I will refrain from commenting on that. But one thing I want to comment on is the digitization part, Anjali. Uh, Digitization, and I want to explain this with an example from Kerala, very close to where Professor is sitting. Uh, Land records digitization. Now, it is important and it is necessary that all land records are digitized so that people don't have to depend on the physical maps and the physical records. And secondly, they become tamper proof. The biggest corruption in land matters happen through tampering of records. So somebody's land is taken away from somewhere and given to somebody else, and then you pay a bribe to get it corrected, and so on and so forth. Now, digitization in Kerala, a large part of it was completed about 5 years back, 6 years back. However, thereafter it stopped. The point I want to mention is that the political will also has to be there. The political accountability also has to be there. After all, a bureaucrat, in fact, is a smaller fry. A bureaucrat probably has to function within the policy of the government, whereas the political bosses are more accountable in the sense that when they bring about a policy or they don't implement a policy, who answers for it? And therefore, a program like land record computerization, digitization, to be held up and nobody being answerable for it. I think these are questions that need to be asked, and the people, the voters, need to know about it.
So, if there is one glaring area, okay, just one glaring area where the government could improve matters rapidly, what would you say it is?
For me, it is
I'll
making
comment on
the
that. All of the above things. Go ahead, please. Yeah,
I,
go ahead.
I wanted to very briefly say since I have very strong views on it and feel it have been a part of it for a few decades. I think the bureaucracy has to be made more professional, honest, empathetic, and accountable. A person who's not doing his job or who's doing it wrong or who is found to be corrupt should not have to face a disciplinary procedure that goes on for 20 years. It's meaningless. The person flourishes in the service, and for 20 years, nothing happens. I think it has to be done in a within weeks so that people understand, and there is a feeling of scare amongst the bureaucracy. Go on,
And I
Professor.
think Narayanan, you would like to add to.
I'll take a technical view. I don't disagree with what Nivedita ji said at all, but I don't know anything about how to do that. But here I can suggest something. All the things I have cited can be traced to the same problem. Digital India initiatives are being sabotaged, and I would say maliciously sabotaged, to facilitate corruption. This is directly traceable, I should say, to how India manages large enterprise software system. I think that's the right buzzword for that. These systems are ridden with basic errors and not corrected for years. There's no accountability. They'll say that it works most of the time. Planes don't crash most of the time. Trains don't collide most of the time. But that's precisely how it adds corruption and sabotage. When something that works routinely suddenly does not work, people don't have a backup plan. You don't go to the train station with a bicycle along just in case the train doesn't come. You don't go to the airport with a boat. Suddenly, you're left at the mercy of officials, and they're even more corrupt clerks. In India, that appears to be the intent. How else can they be that bad? Many important systems, I mean government systems, have a note that says this site works best on Microsoft Internet Explorer version 27.3.1.15 or something like that. Am I to go find and upload that software before I can log into that site? In fact, most Indians use phones. Those phones are mostly run on Android systems or iOS operating systems, Google and Apple. So software must work with Google Chrome and Safari, which is the Apple browser at least. Why are software companies paid if government systems do not work properly with these? That's my problem with that. Who pays these people? Isn't that corruption? So I do have a suggestion where matters could be very rapidly improved, and they need to be. Call the 5 biggest software IT companies in India. Don't publicize what goes on in that conference, but give them 3 months to clean up their act. I have developed some software. I'll tell you my vast experience. Back in 1977, I wrote a program to run on the IBM 370, the biggest computer in India. It was all of 180 lines long. Airplane design. I said, ha. While other people sit with their calculators, I'm going to run a computer program and do this. The program eventually worked a year and a half later after I graduated. That's not the point. First time I actually got it to compile, first time I actually put it in. We had to punch cards on a deck, on a machine and put it in. I got a big stack of output. I was so proud. 253 errors and 175 warnings. My classmates took that and put it on my door and say, "You've broken the record on stupidity." Okay, so I have developed software. I have developed some software since then. Errors are part of the game. If I write a program to say "Hello world," I'll make 3 errors. Why don't they fix it? Things work because people sit there and fix these things. They test them, they break them, they fix them. In India, that is not done. It's just thrown over the wall at the citizen and say, "Oh, you have a problem, you let us know, and we'll think about it 5 years from now." That's the problem.
So, we all know that PM Modi ji, he is on an official visit to the United States later this month, and we are really looking forward to it. But what impact do you think it's going to have, or does it have in the US and in India?
I think all of us would agree. I think many of us would agree that over the last 8-10 years, India's global stock has gone up. And I say this despite the fact that there are leaders who have been saying the opposite, even while sitting in foreign countries. Now, I think we should not go by statements alone. I think one should look at, for instance, the impact this has had on the country's economy. How has the balance of trade improved? How is India considered as a nation now? What do the foreign missions sitting in India have to say? What kind of reports they are sending to their countries? I think these are things that, and of course, FDI, that's important. I think these are things that one needs to look at, the statistics of it. But one thing I want to mention, and since this is more for an audience that is the diaspora, I think the diaspora also needs to look at what is happening within the country and look at the facts and figures, not just who says what. You see, that is most important. And Anjali, I say this with a lot of responsibility, having lived abroad. I have found sometimes News that has been floating around, sitting say, in New York or in London, when you come back to the country, you find that the news is totally false. And this is, I have experienced 10, 15 years back when the news passage was not so quick. Whereas these days, news travels so fast that one doesn't know. And therefore, one has to make sure, even though you're sitting outside the country, you have to make sure that you know what the facts are, what is actually happening in the country, and, if possible, how you can be a part of it, even though you are outside.
Oh, I totally agree with what you're saying, 100%. But Narayanji, before we close, I would like to request you, or maybe understand what would be your set of recommendations, or could you, if you could just provide a summary of. I know you've given lots of recommendations, so maybe just a brief summary at the end would really help.
So first, I pray that the Prime Minister's visit goes off wonderfully well, because we want a strong and prosperous and free India and America, whose citizens are free to be the best that they can be, as the US Army says, and whose governments are based on Dharma and Satyameva Jayate. They're so vital to the future of humanity. But my recommendations today: number one, Swachh Bharat needs follow-up. Hold the district collectors responsible. Don't trust this to the political establishment or whoever it is. District collectors know what should be there. They know what is coming down from the top. They should be held responsible. Slash the paperwork. Remember the government policy: trust but verify and deal with the crooks. Don't go and bother uh, honest tax-paying citizens and treat them like crooks. Errors on government sites and software are an open door, not just for corruption, but for enemy hacking. You really have to worry about that. Make software quality enforcement a national security imperative. The government did that with the COVID-19 emergency. They recognized right at the front that this was a national security emergency. Indian software needs attention today. And this is even more essential to move into the artificial intelligence space, which everybody's talking about. Thank you.
So, thank you so much, Nivedita and Professor Narayanan, for your invaluable views as always. But I would like to conclude by saying that, dear viewers, at the end of the day, no government, no organization, no corporation is perfect. And this holds true for India too. But the progress made in these 9 years surely outweighs the negatives. I'm very positive that the current government will be able to overcome all the hurdles that have plagued India since independence, and the coming years will witness the rise and only rise of this great nation. Thanks. And we'll see you soon in our next episode. Namaste,
Thank you.
and see you soon. Take care. Bye bye.